Hey, I'm trying to live until I die. Come connect, you know it's a lewd state of mind. Yeah, yeah. Talking traveling, if you wanna fly. Fitness and finance, living a better life. Keep it raw, no filter. Living with no limit. Thank you for tuning in. Come on, let's get it.
Gentlemen, welcome back to Lewd State of Mind.
Thank you.
Ted, Nick,
Hello.
Rate 1. You guys were here in November
2022.
last year.
Yep.
We got a really good response from your podcast. A lot of people said, I did not know that. And there was some really good information there. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to double down on that. What do you reckon? So, hey, look, to get us started, obviously our show's sponsored by Buckfast. You guys know what Buckfast is?
I do
You're,
now.
you're about to find out, aren't you?
About to taste it.
Talk among yourselves. I'll just pour us
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Quite interested to it. You've got a full bar set up as well. It's quite interesting.
Only the best for you guys.
And what's the preferred mixer of that, or you have it on your own?
Look, on ice is how I enjoy it. and
Everything
how-
on ice is good.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to double down on some caffeine, just chuck some Red Bull in it or some V.
Does the one that you have any caffeine in it, Ted? The one that you drink.
No,
There's
not
no caffeine.
not normally. No, I add it to it.
Cheers, guys. Here's to
Cheers.
Buckfast. Here's to Rate 1.
Thank you for having us back.
Oh, it's
Cheers,
good to have you
Cheers.
back. You guys have been busy? Yeah?
Yes, flat out.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Flat out like a lizard drinking, eh?
A lot of inquiries.
What's everybody doing these days? They're trying to refinance? Because we did recommend last year that people just ask the question with their banks, with their lenders, and technically you should be getting a better rate
Yes.
than what
Yeah.
you had.
Or keep an eye on it. That's what I'm telling a lot of people. Just keep an eye on it. Sometimes it's competitive, sometimes it's not. So, but a lot of time, like for us, because we talked about how many changes there's been, 13 or whatever in the last year and a half. It's hard to keep up. So
Oh, it's just a constant battle,
just
isn't it?
check in and see where you're at.
Did we say before that the banks have been sneaky bastards?
Yeah, lately, I mean, they always are, but they're in it for profit, obviously. But
Explain how. What are they doing now?
little things we've seen lately is we're not getting as big a discounts as we were. So they're not actually lifting the rates, but new clients now aren't getting as good a deal as we were getting for clients, say, 2-3 months ago. So indirectly, they've moved their rates up.
Yeah,
Or
they
dropped-
also
dropped the discounts.
they used to do cashbacks if you do a refinance. A lot of the banks were doing cashbacks during that time.
Yep.
Now they're slowly starting to get rid of that.
No more cash
No
back.
more.
Oh, there's a handful left, but not
Yeah,
everyone
not a
was
lot.
doing it 6 months ago, and now we're down to a handful left.
Yeah.
So nobody's
6
giving
left.
any incentives to anybody. It's just basically if you want a better rate, you got to ask, and if you can get a better rate, well, that's good. Yeah?
Yeah, we definitely ask. That
Yeah.
doesn't cost you anything. I would say 80 to 90% of clients that ask will get a reduction.
Okay, so what you guys are doing at the moment is getting a lot of clients asking you the question about better rates. Are we looking at refinancing? Are we looking at some other way to help them have more money in their pocket per month? Considering we've had, 13 rate rises now, and we talked about the average mortgage about 500, 600,000 K.
Yep.
So 12 months ago, that was $2,500 per month. And now we're looking at $4,000.
You're getting up there, yes.
Yep.
So an extra $1,500 per month that the average because we're looking at average families. That's what they've got to come up with.
Yep. People are feeling it. They've probably known it, feel it coming, but haven't taken any action. And now we're seeing more people needing to take action.
Well, every month you're getting a rise in your mortgage rates.
Yeah. Most months over the last 13 months. Yeah.
Man, and if you've got multiple properties, it's like Jesus.
In combination with cost of living
Yeah,
going
that's
up
right.
and
Electricity,
taxes.
land tax. Yeah.
Just ridiculous. Hey, we're talking about the cliff. Tell me about the cliff that's coming, or that is there.
I was talking earlier. We've been hearing about it for best part of a year now, and I think the cliff that we heard a year ago was a lot of people that fixed during COVID with a 2-year fixed. They've already come off the cliff, and they're impacted already. But there's a lot that are coming off or coming to the cliff if they fixed for 3 years or fixed very late.
How much are we talking the rate that they fixed at, as opposed to what they're coming into now?
The ones that did the late on the 2-year or did the 3 are generally in the twos, 2.5 at worst.
And it's now, what's the current rate? 6.
Getting close to
Yeah,
6,
getting
yeah,
close to
5
6.
3/4 to 6, yeah.
So 4%. So that's on average, an average mortgage that's around about that $1,500, $2,000 a
Yeah,
month. More.
that's it. Yeah.
Jeez.
They were saying that they had about 30% of the fixed rates come off. We've got another 40 to the end of the year, and then another 30 to around next year, but it tethers out. So we're really interested to see in the next 6 months to see what's going to happen.
Well, we were doing some research before we got on air. There's 6 million mortgages in Australia, and 880,000 of those are coming off that fixed rate by the end of 2023. So that's about 6% of all mortgages. So that's
Even more, yeah.
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 It's astronomical. Astronomical.
Well, they're the ones that I'm getting a lot of calls on. And really, we're just saying to people, sit tight because the rate's amazing. There's no point changing it now. But the banks are getting in touch with you about a month before to let you what you're going to roll out to. And some are competitive and some are not. So we're saying you could probably check in a couple of months before, but the time to make decisions is about 4 to 5 weeks before.
So if we're talking about the banks and being competitive, are there a certain group of banks that are doing more than others, or is it just they don't give a shit?
Oh, they range. When they want business, they'll have
that's
promotions or they'll be, if they got appetite for risk and they need business, they'll have promotions and lower rates. And when they don't, they're getting a load of business through niches and policy. They don't need to, or they've got a good loyal client base. They don't have to be as competitive.
Hey, we talked in the previous podcast about the buffer that the banks have on your borrowing power, and back then it was, I think we said, was it 3%?
3%, yeah.
So you've got they calculate how much you can you need to service a loan based on your income, and then they build in this buffer for interest rate rises. So we've gone 4%, and their buffer was 3%. So that automatically puts a lot of people into mortgage stress. Correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. Well, especially when they were at 2%, they were doing the buffer at 3. We're at 5. We're now at 6%. So
Yep.
a lot of mortgages are above what the banks have predicted in terms of that buffer rate as well.
And of course now, I can borrow less today than what I could borrow 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
So explain to our listeners how that happens.
Yeah. Well, as the interest rates, similarly with the buffer rate of 3%, as the interest rates increase as well, that adds on to that overall interest plus buffer rate. So we call it the assessment rate. So as the interest rates rises, your borrowing capacity drops. That's purely because when interest rate rises, you have less money for yourself, more money going to the mortgage, and then that's where the borrowing capacity has shortened. And it's shortened quite significantly over the last...
And the living expense
Yep.
allowance they use, they've moved it up with cost of living rises.
Okay. And so if I could borrow $500K 2 years ago, how much can I borrow today?
Oh, I thought it'd be closer to 400.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, thereabouts.
It's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah,
100,000.
about 100,000, yeah. 100,
And then-
150 sometimes.
And then, as we said in the previous one, which was a good fact to know, that for every credit card or every $1,000 worth of credit card limit you have, that reduces your borrowing capacity by $7,000?
Closer to 6,
Yeah.
I think. But yeah,
Yeah.
substantial. You have a 10
7.
grand card, it's 50, 60 grand off your
that's
capacity,
right.
There you go. And not a lot of people knew that. You know, and these people that have got these credit cards, and I know a lot of families today would have had these credit cards as a backstop, and now they're using those credit cards in the high interest rates because the cost of living has just gone fucking bunter.
And it's the limit, not the balance they look at. too.
Well, exactly, yeah, because it's
can draw on it.
potentially what you
Correct.
can draw down on
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether you've got a $10,000 credit card with nothing on it. That's $60,000 worth of borrowing capacity that you don't have.
And some of those cards and limits were thrown out willy-nilly by the banks. You had a card you can just apply on the app, top it up to an extra 1,000 or two. And so
It's like you misclick and then they give you a new card.
Are they still doing that today?
I think they're a bit more responsible, but that's a large part of their profit, I would have thought. So they're keen on people having cards, yeah.
So people that are coming to you today and saying, "Hey, I need some help. I maybe need to refinance." Are we looking more refinancing or just trying to get a better rate? So what's the breakdown of people going, "Hey, I'm in a bit of shit here. Tell me what I can and can't do with regards to maybe refinancing." What are you doing for your clients?
Or, that term you talk about there, we got some clients that come to us, they call them the mortgage prisoners, where they're finding it tough, they're on a high rate and they don't like it, they want to leave, but they don't qualify. So that's the prisoners.
So they don't qualify how? They just don't have the earning capacity?
Yeah, to go to another lender to borrow the same amount of money. So they maybe did it a year or two ago where borrowing capacity was higher. They borrowed to the limit. Rates have gone up. Their living expenses have gone up as well. And they say, hang on, for that same income, you can't have the loan you've got now.
Yep.
So you generally can't change banks. However, in saying that, some of the banks now dropping that buffer for certain clients if they're putting them in a better position.
And you were saying they were dropping that from about 3 to 1%, is that correct?
Yeah, that buffer going from 3% down to 1%, and then reduces the whole assessment rate, and then allows you the mortgage repayments what they look at isn't as great.
Are there a lot of people asking for interest only?
Well, that's cut back a few years ago, and it's pretty hard to do interest only on a home loan. You'd have to have a pretty good reason or financial hardship, and that would only be a temporary measure. So investment, no problem, but for owner-occupied, generally not. You're not going to get it.
Okay.
Or they're really
so
cautious
just
on
so our listeners understand, if you've got a dwelling that you're living in, you're probably not going to get an interest-only loan on it. As you say, even in hardship times, they'll just...
Or hardship, if you're in hardship, they'll give you a break, and they might let you do that for 6 months, but you've got to have a plan to get out of it.
Yeah. Well, they did that through COVID.
It does affect, and during COVID, they allow you to do it, because normally it affects your credit. If you're going financial hardship, you tell the banks you're going financial hardship, it shows up on your credit report. During COVID, they were allowing you to do it, and they won't touch your credit report.
Disclosing,
Yeah.
So
now, we're talking about credit reports. We had a discussion about stuff that can go wrong and how you can get some red marks on there. I think our listeners need to know that even though they're finding things tough, you can't be missing payments and getting red marks, because it's just going to be detrimental down the track.
Yeah, even if it's just a few days.
Yeah.
You don't have
well, you had a customer recently, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was a simple. We all have accounts going through different pockets. We normally call it like different spending pockets. You've got account for savings, account for bills, account for savings long term. So I had a customer where she had different money in different accounts. She had the money, but it just wasn't enough transfers going into the account, just because she wasn't keeping up with the rate changes and the repayments of the mortgage. So it's quite interesting to know that every time the rate changes, the repayments will change. And if you're not if you're doing an automatic transfer, which a lot of customers do, they set it, forget it, money's coming from one account into the mortgage account.
And that's been happening pretty much
Correct.
every 12 months.
And
so
if you
every
don't
month
update
for 12 months.
That's right. If you don't keep updating that, you're going to be behind. So we had a customer where it's the exact same thing. Nothing on her that she had money in different accounts.
So the money was
fine.
there, it just
It was
wasn't in the account that the mortgage was going to be drawn by.
Yeah, correct. And because of that, I think she went on holiday or something like that, didn't see the accounts. Like next thing she knows, she's about 2 months behind. And it wasn't behind by much, but maybe at $80 just because it wasn't enough money.
So it was just $80.
It was just $80.
And now there's a big red mark next
right.
to her name on her credit.
Or something you've got to explain every time you apply for finance.
So how would that affect her if she wanted to get more finance?
Yeah, so then the banks will, as that happens with the red marks, your credit score lowers. And as the credit score lowers after a certain amount, I think generally it's about 600-700, they don't give, it's harder to get that loan through.
Okay.
And some banks, and unfortunately for this bank, as soon as they see it, they don't want anything.
They don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Even though didn't you say the customer had other properties but it was all
over
$80.
Yeah, all over $80.
Jesus.
And it was just a mismanagement, and only because of that score. So we waited a few more months, and that score goes back up again, provided that there's no other credit taken out, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're saying it's just a time period.
It's a time period, yeah.
Yeah. So what are we looking at? 6 months or something before?
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah. What the bank wants to know is they just want to make sure that it's really a one time within that period.
Could they not explain it away? No.
Well, credit scores are automatic calculated by a system, so you can explain it, but the banks have a policy, a certain score that, sorry, we can't look at it.
Just not going to do it.
But if it's right on it, or there's some banks might be open to looking at it, you can explain it, and something like that you may get through somewhere else. But some lenders are hard and fast on a rule, and it's only time that'll fix it, which could be months.
Yeah, we do have options for it. It's just that whether or not now
it's cheap.
It's cheap or not. Yeah.
What did her husband have to say about it?
I wonder. Yeah. I didn't hear that.
Oh dear. Mic drop. Wow. Hex debt. We're talking about hex debt.
Yes. Well, it's similar to the credit cards that it's now a factor the banks look at in your borrowing capacity. So your graduates coming out 2-3 years out have still got a HEX debt. It's a commitment coming from their pay. They are earning less because they've got a payment. And with the HEX debt, in the past, we would normally just leave it because the interest rates on HEX debt was pretty low. It's at CPI, sort of 1-2%.
Yeah.
But now it's at 5, 6, 7%. It's a debt that may be worth clearing now to increase your borrowing capacity. But twofold is that also you'll have extra cash in your pay because the debt's gone. You don't have that deduction out of your pay.
What did we say the average HEX debt was? Did we know what that was? It was around about 30 grand?
Yeah,
average?
25 to 30,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, our older clients, sort of 30, 35, 40, the HEX debt's minimal, but first home buyers have generally got a HEX debt if they've been to uni.
Wow. So if we're looking at first home buyers, we did some figures on some reverse calculations because I was intrigued as to how much people need to earn and how much they need as a deposit and how long it takes to get that deposit to get their first house or get an investment property. So we did some. You've done some research for us,
Well,
haven't you?
I've prepared presentations, not just a.
And we want,
blank
do you want to
screen
shout
logo.
out somebody that helped you with this?
Yeah, Caitlin.
Caitlin.
Caitlin from.
Well
Road
done,
One.
Caitlin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's very good.
What have we
The
got here,
graphic
Matt?
designs like awesome.
It is, and you guys have got a new logo. I like it.
Yes.
I like it a lot. How much did that cost?
Too much. Too much.
We won't talk about that. I'm sure it was a sensible investment in your future. All right, Mev. Here we go. Come on. What do you got?
Yeah, let's go. It's the animations. I've created this on Microsoft, and
Okay, so the Melbourne Metro medium sale price.
yep,
Yeah, houses.
there we go.
There we go. So
Just down there, Mav.
stop there, Mev.
Yep.
All right,
No,
explain it.
So it's pre-COVID, that first one.
Explain it away, Nick.
Yeah. All right. So what we have here, I've got this from REIV, which is the real estate. I think it's the Institute of
Yeah.
Victoria. Yep. So they've got all the data of all the sales, and this is the medium price in Melbourne, Metro Melbourne. So that's just medium being you've got the lowest and the highest, and whatever the price is in the middle, right? And we've got this graph of the sale prices and the sale quarterly prices of each quarter from 2018 all the way to 2023. Now the blue line's the house, black line's the units.
Units as in apartments.
As in apartments,
Yep.
units,
Okay.
apartments, and all that. So, yeah, you can definitely see a very interesting, curve as we head towards the quarter of 2022, quarter one. Mav, can I get you to press next on this one? So we can see the prices here,
Just pre-COVID, 800 grand for a house.
and then as soon as we hit 2020 quarter one,
Jesus.
it's
no?
increased.
Is there another
yeah,
one?
that's it. That's
Well,
it.
that's
Yep.
the peak, yeah.
Yeah, that's that peak.
Okay, so we've gone from 800,000 up to 1.13 million.
Yep.
The medium house price in Melbourne.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Well, that was 21 though. So now
2020. Is that 2022? Yeah,
Yeah,
towards the end of 21. It's
Yeah.
right towards the end of COVID.
Okay.
So when things started to go back up and get people spend and everything again. You can see that now
interest
we're
rates
heading
are,
downwards.
2%.
Yep.
Well,
So
money
that's
was
it.
cheap,
Free.
wasn't it?
Almost free.
Money was
Almost
cheap.
free.
Yeah. And everybody was trying to get out of Dodge, but that doesn't relate to this. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's amazing.
Yeah. And the next one,
Mav,
and that's where we're sitting now.
so it's gone back down to 950. So we've got a 150 grand increase
Yep.
over 3 years.
Yep. It's pretty much post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, I read something this week about the housing market in Melbourne, and there's a shortage of stock. Now, generally they say there's about 150 to 180,000 houses, units available, and that stock's down to about 100, 120. So we're looking at about 50,000 units less at the moment. So
Interesting.
that just obviously adds to the housing crisis, but there's people sitting on stock. Why are they sitting on stock?
Well-
Because the markets, as you can see, the markets dip, but according to research, apparently the house price has gone up again.
Well, also it shows that it's still better than what it was. It's not as good as the peak. I think a bit of it's around uncertainty and people not knowing what to do because the rates have gone up 13 times. I think you get a period of stability, people start making decisions again. it's not going to open stock up enough for the crisis, but be more stock on the market.
Well, that's another discussion altogether, isn't it?
Yeah.
The housing crisis.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, so if you look at that peak at 1.1, I mean, that's an anomaly. I mean, that's something that nobody would factor into the market. And we all know we're reeling from COVID in one way or another, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
What do we got next? We did some.
Yeah. So the next one is the units. I think
Here we go.
it does a preview before it comes up.
Melbourne Metro medium sale price for units. You right there, Mav?
I think I'm using the online one, so it doesn't actually quite doesn't actually come. Oh, there we go.
We got a
There
bit of it. You right there,
Got a
mate?
bit of a glitch.
Good on you, mate. It's all right, mate.
No,
No
it's not your
stress.
fault.
No stress.
It's
No
just because it doesn't match. Yeah.
So there we go. Post-COVID, 585. The middle of COVID, 695, and then pre.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry,
similar
pre
trend.
and post. I'm getting my pre and post mixed up.
Yeah, it's similar.
610. So that's what are we talking? 15. So
Yeah.
$25,000 increase
Yep.
over that
That's
3-year
right.
period. Now, I read something that the average increase on a house price is supposed to be 3% per year. Is that correct on the value of the property?
Yeah, I guess so. I think in general, overall, yeah, that's
Yeah.
how it works. But also know that this is just based on a very like a general number across all different suburbs,
Yep.
all different areas.
Yeah.
So you'll get
Well,
anomalies in
stats will
different-
vary. Yeah,
Correct,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, an interesting point in that price range for your first home buyers is there's a lot of government incentives. So they're holding pretty well the prices there. And the housing crisis you talked about before is that demand is pushed down a bit on price, and it's a hot spot in that price range. No stamp duty under 600 for first home buyers. A lot of government incentives, grants and
Okay, so explain. So stamp duty is a government tax, and it's around about 5%.
5%.
normally.
Yep.
So if you're borrowing $1 million, it's 50 grand.
Yep, thereabouts.
But
So-
first home buyer under 600 will get it waived.
Yep. And that's only in Victoria.
Or different states have different incentives, but in Victorian ones up to 600 and concessional discounts up to 750. So even at 650, 700, they're getting
a discount.
a bigger discount than you and I.
Yeah. Okay. Because it all adds up in the end, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah.
5% here and 2% there and whatever. So,
Yeah, it all goes in together.
all right, what do we got next?
Yeah. So next is a comparison where I did a side by side, something 2019 to 2023. So I based it on the house prices that we're looking at just then.
Yep.
So this will give us a bit of a breakdown on, a little bit more of a chunk down level of every single element of what's happening. So purchase price, if you bought for the same house, the same type of house, between 2019 to 2023, there's a difference of 150,000.
Is that above average of what the normal growth would have been? Because as I said, at 3%.
Yeah.
Is that in line, or is it
Slightly above.
As in,
Yeah. Slightly above.
Yeah?
Yeah, slightly above. I think it really helped with pushing, but the 3% could be over a longer period of time. So we're looking only,
Yep.
4 years. So
Yep.
that's what's showing so far. The next one, Mav. At an 80% loan, this is how much of a loan that you'll be getting
Okay.
during that time.
So for in 2019, for an $800,000 house, you needed $160,000
Yep,
deposit.
correct.
And what's the
Good
difference
maths.
between now?
Is that 190?
You do the math.
Yeah. Is that 190?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think so.
190,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Plus
Yeah.
stamps.
Plus stamps.
Plus
yeah.
stamps.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we said, and because, and now you can borrow less. Your borrowing capacity is less, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's part of the reason the price is sort of tilting back down again, because
Yeah.
the banks won't give people
Yep.
are probably prepared to spend that money on a property, but the bank won't give them the money, or not as much as they used to.
Yeah, yeah. And the next one, Mav, is the monthly repayments.
All right, so there you go. So 2019, $2,900 at 3.49.
Yep.
And today it's $4,500 at 5.89.
Yeah.
So that's an extra 1,600.
Yeah. That's also based on, because the loans change as well.
Yep.
So the loans increase by, 120 thereabouts. So that.
Okay, so that is a little bit relative.
Yeah,
If
correct.
you take the interest rate rise out
That's
of
right.
it. Yeah.
But then if you're looking at the actual property that you're buying, that's how much extra you're actually paying each month at that point in time.
Man, well, that's extra money you got to find, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's
You
right.
know?
And to be able to qualify and get into a property
Wow.
as well.
So you need more money, and it's getting harder to get finance. How
It's a challenge.
how are the
You're
younger
hitting-
couples
getting
doing
hit on
it?
both fronts there.
Yeah,
Wow, no more Avo toast, eh?
Yeah, people got to start cutting
Yeah.
back. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cut back on those lattes and
Yeah.
those porn star martinis.
Yeah.
All right, deposit amount needed. So the difference between, well, they're 200,000
Yeah.
versus,
So this includes the stamp duty and costs
yes.
involved. So that's a 20% plus cost,
And
this gives
avoiding
you-
mortgage insurance as
Yeah,
well.
that's right.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Today, if I wanted to borrow $950,000,
Buy for $950.
yeah, sorry, I'm going to need
Deposit and
a quarter of
Yep.
$1,000,000.
that's right.
How long is it going to take me to save
Without being
a quarter of
charged
a million?
high interest rate and lender's mortgage insurance, Ted was saying. Yeah, that's right.
Or
It's tough.
we were doing a lot of family guarantee loans where parents are putting up a security.
Is that happening more and more now?
Yep.
So technically, if we talk about exactly that as security, if me and my wife don't have the borrow capacity to meet the loan requirements, but my mum and dad who own their property come in and say we'll guarantor.
Not quite.
No,
If you don't have
explain.
enough equity or deposit, they can jump in. And let's use Mav and yourself as an example.
Okay.
If Mav wants to buy a house in 5 years' time, doesn't have, maybe he's not going to buy for that much, but he doesn't have that much deposit.
Yep.
He still needs to have the borrowing capacity to borrow the money. That's number
That
one.
doesn't change.
Correct. So if he can't afford it, they can't get it.
Simple
But
as
let's
that.
say his income is good and he can borrow it, but just doesn't have a deposit, like this situation, 250. You could say, hang on, I've got equity in my home. I'm happy to help out my son, not give him any money, but he can borrow that. So in this case, he'd borrow 950 and they'd lend 100% of property value
Right.
if he can afford it. And that's a way of
And
buyers getting in.
that's without that extra insurance, the lender's insurance.
Correct. Yep.
That's
So
right.
explain the lender's insurance to our listeners. It's if you don't qualify
Yeah.
and you don't have enough deposit. Is that correct?
Well, the way I explain it to my clients is lender's mortgage insurance is a risk premium that allows the bank to take a risk on you. So if you're borrowing 80% of a property value and you can't afford it, it's quite easy for the bank. If you default on the loan, they could sell the property, get their money back.
Yeah.
When you start to borrow 85, 90, 95 or even 100 with these family guarantee loans, we sort of say, well, if you can't pay the loan and the bank's going to foreclose, there's a good chance they're going to lose money.
Yeah, there's no equity in it.
And
is
the
there?
banks are in the business of making money. They don't like taking risk. It's a great business to be in. So what they do here is you say, well, mum and dad want to help out. They can use their property as additional security and it reduces the risk for the bank. They've got another property they could sell if required.
Right. So they're just covering their asses.
Correct.
But they'll lend up to 100%.
Yeah, even 105, 107 to cover costs.
Oh, right.
For the right client.
Really?
For a strong client, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They do like to see some hurt money from applicants that they have got the capacity to save.
Explain hurt money to me.
Well, if you're leaning on family and you're blowing all your money, it sort of shows that maybe you don't have the capacity to repay. So they like to see you can save or have saved or you've cleared out some other debts you were paying that you don't have anymore to show that you can afford the commitment. Because if you're relying totally on family, it's the banks don't want to foreclose and sell mum and dad's property either.
Yeah.
So they want to see the capacity to repay for their applicants.
Oh,
Particularly
look!
kids.
If my son was an idiot with money, I wouldn't be stumping up anything as a guarantee. I mean, that's the thing is, I think for younger listeners, it's all about creating these habits about saving and understanding how money works and how it can work for you and how it can work against you. Because, as you say, if you've got a bad credit history or you're really just bad with money and you don't show any consistent savings or anything like that, the bank's just going to look at you and go, no, you don't fit into any box that we want. And you know, you may be doing some stupid mistakes when you're younger, but it's definitely going to come back and bite you in the ass when you want to, you know.
Well, you look at the scenario, 250,000. Who's got 250,000?
I was going to say,
not especially first home buyers, let alone second, third home buyers. Who's got 250,000? So often it's equity in property they've got, or
You have
their
to buy
family
some-
members have got
yeah.
equity that want to help out.
Yep.
Or you have to buy something less.
Yeah, because I've got some
Not that
clients,
high.
good income, good savings that I see, not a lot of debt, and maybe they've got 80, 90,000 in the bank. It's not going to get them in unless they're a first home buyer because there's some government incentives.
yeah.
Or you're paying mortgage insurance, and when you're getting up to $1 million, the insurance it gets pretty pricey, sort of 3%.
Wow.
So you 30, 40 grand in
grand,
insurance,
yeah. That's it.
you can avoid it with,
Even 80, 90 grand's a lot
It
to
is,
save.
yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, if you're a young couple and you're working and you're saving, and you're just living your life, you're going on holiday, it's going to take some while to
That's
do
right,
that.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden somebody's pregnant, boom.
We will have
They
life
put
events.
Exactly. They put a
that
dent in
happens.
that one, didn't it? It's just like you got to understand the struggle of some of these couples, or even individuals, But you got to take your hat off to people that have got good saving
Yeah,
habits,
that's right.
and they get to their goal,
Yeah.
and they sacrifice. And we were talking about it earlier on that it's getting to the point now where people need to start making some sacrifices, whether they like it or not, because the pressure, the cost of living is impacting most middle class people,
Yep.
middle class families. It's not affecting the top tier, but
think
it's
it's starting
affecting.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, school fees, all the costs add up, and it's across the board. And I guess that's what the government wants with their rate rises. They want to control spending,
Yeah.
but it's always a delayed reaction, and people are feeling it, but maybe it doesn't show through the stats that the government run their reports on. But I'm sure it is, and it'll reflect in a few more months that right now it's probably about where they've held rates this month, but people are struggling. Or maybe not totally struggling, but their buffers are starting to disappear, and they are thinking about, geez, but maybe I do need to cut back on certain things.
I read something the other day that the RBA was specifically trying to put hurt on this generation of borrowers because they were entitled and they just wanted to make
Change the
them,
mindset, maybe.
they really wanted to make them learn, to teach them a fucking lesson, and in one instance, on one hand, I go, yep, there's a lot of people that have been entitled and they've got cheap money, they've got all these situations that have been laid out for them, and they've got things easy.
Yeah.
And now they're just going to have to show a little bit of resilience.
Yeah. Well,
And
during COVID, it was like that. People getting money without working. So it really grew a culture of something that you'll be able to get the money. And
this
then things
mentality
cheap.
of being entitled and,
Yeah, that's
and not
right.
having to work. And that's, if you've heard any of my podcasts previous, I've got a bugbear with a generation that are just fucking lazy.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that are eating avo on toast and drinking their lattes on a Sunday, and they're not having to give up anything.
Well, I think the last podcast we had the rates movements, and it's you're talking, it hadn't gone up for the best part of 10 years. So that's not quite a generation, but it's not far from it, where they've never seen a rate rise. So maybe it's not all their fault that they've been like that. It's just that was the norm. It never went up.
I think it now comes down to the education piece as well. I think a lot of people in that age just don't get involved in the whole finance and how to do it, and things kind of snowball effect when it comes to small debts or credit card debts,
bad
and
habits.
interest and bad habits, and
Well, once again, it's about that education. It's about teaching children, young adults, about, as we said before, how money
How
can
can
work for them.
affect you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
correct.
And it's in life, it's an important and integral part of anybody's life. Money, how to use it, how to make it work for you, and what not to do with it. So as I said, I have no a sympathy for people that don't know how to sacrifice something for the better good of their situation.
Well, they're having to do it now, I think.
Yeah.
learning the hard way.
Just the whinging about it. So, anyway, let's get back to we were talking about. I said, who's got $250,000 sitting around? Who has that these days?
Not many. So most of them either they're paying mortgage insurance or they're leaning on family, or if they're buying for slightly less than the first home buyers, the government's providing that guarantee.
Do we know what the percentage is of loans that have insurance attached to them?
That's a good question.
For our first home buyers, if they're not, they're buying under the threshold. They don't have it because they qualify, but so that's pretty low. But that threshold is quite low compared to what they want. Buying a house of under 800, sometimes or 750.
Yeah, that's right.
They can't find it. So
They've got caps.
The sacrifices in terms of the type of property they want. They can't have that house they want nearer the city. They've got to go smaller or further out. But it's the people paying LMI, people don't qualify is a handful. I wouldn't say there's a high percentage, maybe 5-10%. But it could be people that are refinancing now to borrow money to buy cars or renovations and going above that 80%. We see more of it there.
Needing it, yeah.
Or your non-first home buyers that have got a reasonable amount of deposit but not quite enough. In this case here, they might have 150 and they don't have that. Maybe it's your new migrants who don't have a family member who's in the country's got equity to lean on, aren't first home buyers or are over the threshold. So of those ones, that's a bit high, but you might get 20-30% that are paying mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
Because they're borrowing more than 80% of purchase price.
And you said mortgage insurance is about 3% of the...
Above 90 it is. If they're borrowing closer to 90, it's closer to 2%.
2%, yeah.
Cool. All right, what have we got next, Math?
Yeah, just on that, while Mav's doing that, it's interesting to see that now we've got people won't be able to buy for that $950 anymore. So you got a lot of people being pushed out of those price range, and it's almost a shift in terms of the type of demographic of people buying in certain areas as well. And so yeah, it's quite interesting to see.
So from your point of view, sorry, before we go into this, from your point of view, from what you're seeing on a daily basis, what's the housing market doing at the moment from your point of view? I mean, regardless of what the media is saying, what do you guys see?
Yeah, from what Nick said there, there's downward pressure from they can't borrow it. So there's a little bit of that. There's the demand for people wanting to buy, and you're hearing about migration's back, and so it's people want to buy, and then there's that combination of people that are holding on to their property because they're not sure.
Yeah.
So that's where prices, I think, are holding because the lack of stock.
Yeah, exactly.
Supply and demand.
Yep.
But there's some downward pressure, and when we looked at that graph for 1.1, now it's at 950. I think there's still some downward pressure, but the lack of stock is holding it there because there's enough buyers that do qualify still.
Do we see it bouncing back? Do we see a lot more stock coming on the market in the next 6 months? Do people wait
combination
for
of both?
They wait for the warm weather, don't they?
That's right. Yeah, spring. Yeah. Usually, when a few real estate agents that we talk to, they usually have more and more stock during spring. People can be bothered going out. I mean, during this weather, you just don't really want to go out looking for houses or even move. If you've got kids and things you want to move in the cold weather, it's just a lot more harder.
For the sake of saving someone, I'd be out looking for bargains. That's what I'd be doing. But as you say, if the market's flat, there's no bargains to be had, is there?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of movement either way.
Is there such a thing as a bargain in the housing market now?
If they're hanging on long term, it probably doesn't matter too much either. I get the question a lot, should I wait, should I buy? And I sort of say, if you're buying for long term, I don't think it matters too much. You look at that graph, if you timed it spot on, you could have bought it cheaper, but how do you predict it?
Yeah, that's right.
But if you're hanging on it properly for 20, 30 years, you're not worried about a 50 grand movement if it's gone up 400,000 or 500,000.
That's right.
And the one thing we got a feedback from the last podcast was about what you're buying and what potential upside you had in that. Like if you were doing renovations or you could subdivide or, so you're looking at value, not just value in housing your family and keeping them warm, but the value of the property going forward.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you've
that's where you're making money more so than buying and hoping it goes up. It's more
you
exactly. Can improve it.
Yeah. So if you're a little bit handy, I mean, even if you're not a little bit handy, you can still. There's plenty of resources out there.
Handy people.
Yeah, you can. Well, you've got friends and family, and as long as you've got a good sparky and a good plumber, you can increase the value of your asset.
That's right.
Dramatically with renovations. But anyway, let's get back to we're doing some. Because I said to you, I emailed you and I said, look, I want to do some reverse calculations. I want to know how much I need. Or how much I need to earn and what the deposit is on certain scenarios. So this is our first one. This is buying an apartment.
Yeah, so buying an apartment. So we're going to take it. It was a good thing that you guys touched based on the HEX debt, the credit cards and things. So this is a good example to kind of incorporate that as well. So what we've got a single adult. He's a first home buyer, so probably living at home at the moment. Just doesn't pay any rent. It's really just the HEX debt. He's got his credit card and it's just his main living expenses.
All right, so he's got 30 grand. What did he do to get the 30 grand debt? Is he a doctor? Is he?
He's 30s.
He's just an engineer.
Could be school teacher.
School teacher
or a nurse.
Yeah.
Well, they're screaming out for school teachers at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah. We know a few that's trying to leave the industry, coming to brokering.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting.
They spend all that money on an education and found out that they didn't need it or they don't like it.
Yeah.
Or not getting paid enough.
Yeah, that's right. That's the main thing. Not getting paid enough.
Yeah. The bank looks and you go, so you're a school teacher? No, you don't earn enough.
Yeah. So the example. I hope the animations work. Let's try it.
All right, we've got. Here we go. All right, so if we're looking at buying an apartment, purchase a new home for, a new apartment for $600,000, you're probably going to get what, one or two bed, one bath.
That's right. Yeah.
Two bed,
Two bed, one bath.
Depends on the area. Yeah.
Yep.
2 bed,
Okay.
1 bath, and one bed.
So first home buyer, single adult, they've got a HEX debt of 30,000.
Yep.
They've got a $6,000 credit card limit, so that means the borrowing capacity is about $42,000 less.
Yep.
If they didn't have it.
That's it. Correct.
And they're living at home with good old mum and dad.
Yep. Correct.
How old are they? Are they in their 30s?
Well, you look at the income,
Yeah, if you
110.
look at the income.
Yeah, I'd say they're in their early 30s.
Yeah,
Wouldn't be in
early
their
30s.
20s.
Wouldn't be a school teacher though.
Private school.
Oh,
I
that-
met
yeah,
one
that's
during the
true.
week. He's earning more than that as a private school teacher.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
there we
really?
go. Yeah.
All right, so the monthly income after tax, so he's earning, what did we say, $110,000
110,
annually.
yeah,
So
you
that's
can
at
see that.
6,800
Yep.
a month.
Yep. Correct.
That's more than what I earn.
Net.
Come on, Mav.
All
what
right.
do we
Next
got?
one. So
Here we go. You can explain that away.
deposit needed to save up, and we've got the left side, and then on the right side is the funds that's coming, or where the funds are coming from. So if we all look on the left side, we've got the purchase price of 600. Now, because he's a first home buyer and he's buying at the 600 level, he gets that stamp duty exemption that we're talking about. Just
So no 5%.
no 5%.
No 5%
stamp duty.
extra addition.
Correct.
Yep.
He does have to pay conveyancing, legal fees. You know, you've got
Lawyers.
transfer of land, lawyers, all that. So that roughly around is $5,000.
Yep.
So the total funds needed to buy that apartment would be 605,000. Based on his income and his current financial position with the HEX debt and the credit card, he's got 450,000 in terms of his maximum borrowing capacity.
That's absolute max.
absolute max. At
That's
the
all
moment.
the bank's going to give him.
Correct. So next one, Mav, we can see here that we need about 155,000 as a deposit.
Jesus Christ. You reckon he saved that?
Yeah.
Living at home?
Well, so the alternative there is, clear out the HEX debt, and that borrowing capacity jumps. Reduce your credit card limits, the capacity jumps. So
I've never had $155,000 sitting in an account. I've never,
Yeah.
not just sitting there. No, have you? Have you? Oh well,
Haven't
it's
got that.
just mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he needs $155,000. So if he didn't have that HEX debt and he didn't have that credit card, he could borrow another 80,000. Is that correct?
Thereabouts, yeah, correct.
Okay, so that would take him up to 530.
Yeah. So it will add about 45 or drop 45 from the actual deposit needed. So you're looking about 105 then.
Okay. All right.
All right, next one.
Come on, man.
So now we're looking at his monthly expenses and how much can he actually save and how long it takes for him to save. So if you've got that single adult earning after tax 6.8 a month, you've got the HEX repayment of 650 a month based on that 30 grand.
Yep.
And then standard living expenses, living at home, you don't have to pay anything, hopefully.
Is there a basic calculator for that? Do you guys have
Or
like a reference that you just
the
go?
banks have a they call it HEM, household expenditure measure, what they expect a single person, a couple with kids, and it's also
earning
based
that.
on income too.
Yep. Yeah.
So the more income you earn, the more they expect to spend. So
Yes,
it does
yep.
vary.
Okay, good to know. So there you go. So what's the next one, Mav? So he needs $49,800 of annual savings, which is going to take him
Yep.
3 years. So okay, so that's half of his annual income. He needs to save He needs to save 50 cents of every dollar he earns.
Yep, thereabouts. Actually, a little bit more because that 110 is before tax. So, yeah, he's
You talk about the generation of, these people don't want to wait 3 years.
Yeah.
Someone on that, they consider themselves on good money, 110, say, maybe he's got 40, 50,000 saving. That you would think that person's in a good position. They're in good money, they've got good savings. They should be able to buy a home. But in this case here, it shows there's little things you would need to do to get them in quicker, which is clearing out HEX, drop credit card limits. Maybe he's got to lean on someone to get more deposit, and perhaps he's got to come back to us with higher income in the near future.
So
that's right.
real life, is it feasible that he can save 50 cents out of every dollar he earns?
If he's living at home and he's
Yep.
super on his budget, perhaps,
Yep.
but not realistic. I
Keep in
wouldn't
mind
think
that
for
this is no splurge on a new car, no holidays. So
Okay.
this is very strict as well.
So if he knuckles down for 3 years,
Uh-huh.
he's sitting pretty.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you think about it,
right.
he purchases that property. He's already got $150,000 worth of equity in it,
Correct.
right? And then that asset is going to increase in value by
Yeah.
technically 3% per annum. Yeah.
I think apartments are a bit different, but in the same line.
What's the
sure.
rate of?
The apartments I know apartments are definitely a little bit less.
Would you, in this particular case, if
Hmm.
you were the parents, would you say try to find a a house and land package, maybe a little bit further out of town
Yep.
for $550.
Yep.
Is that are we getting anything for
It
$550
depends.
these days?
You're going a long way out.
Yeah,
aren't
it
you?
could go a long way out.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on his lifestyle, what he wants to do, whether he lives close to where he.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Travel.
client come to me with that, I'd be pushing him towards a buyer's advocate and say, stay away from apartments and high-rise if you can. House and land, I don't think you're going to get something close enough. You're going regional, I think, in 600. So a buyer's advocate's probably buying him an older 2-bedroom unit in the outer suburbs,
Yeah.
which is a better property, I would think, than an apartment or a house and land package out. Way
2
out.
bedroom, like a unit's going to be part
Older
of a
unit.
strata or a,
Yeah.
or a body corporate.
Maybe
Yeah.
10 in the block, 15 in the block.
Okay.
This is
Possibly
usually done
less.
for lifestyle. People buy apartments for lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it is more expensive. You don't get that capital growth as the outskirts and units and townhouses.
Yeah, but
things
you've
like
got, as you say, you've got that lifestyle
Yep,
in the city.
convenience.
You've got
Yep.
maybe you're on the 10th or 11th floor, so you've got a nice view.
Yep. Bachelor pad.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
so
definitely.
you forego a little bit of growth based on that little nicety of being in amongst it in the city. But yeah,
It's also a combination. The other thing we talk about dropping commitments to get your borrowing capacity up, but the other one is that maximum borrowing capacity is probably one lender. I think you've got a brochure, a graph later showing that the same client, the same thing, how much different banks will give you.
well, that's going to be
And
interesting
will
to see
be-
that.
That will vary too.
Yeah. Wow, what do we got next? So we're going from an apartment to a house.
Yep.
Yep. Mav, you want to back that up?
There you
Cheers. Right, so we're going to buying a family home.
Yep.
This scenario, we've got a family, 2 adults, 2 kids, which is your standard family unit. So they're non-first home buyers. So that means they already have a house.
Yep. Either they've had a house before,
Yep.
they've sold it, now they're renting for some circumstances. One of the person might have maybe an investment property, not with the other. So
Okay.
maybe when they were single, et cetera,
Yep.
et cetera. Yep.
A car loan, $600 a month. Are we going to times that by 2? Because mum's got to take the kids to soccer. Yeah? You didn't factor that one in, did you?
Well, unless you've got a cheaper car for the second.
Oh dear!
the guy.
Not these days. She's not driving a Kia Cerato.
Well, sometimes what we're seeing is they have 2 loans, but one's like 50 grand and one's 10 will pay out one of the loans with their savings.
Yeah.
They get a nicer car and then okay.
Okay. And I think the
for the dad.
$6,000 credit card's a little bit light too.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what's
Yeah.
the average family holiday for 2 kids? Yeah. Fiji's about $6,000. Boom, just like that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
that's-
so effectively, what you're saying is, the numbers that we show here, in reality, may be a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not picking you. I'm not
No,
picking
no,
you to
no,
bits.
no, I understand,
I'm just
understand.
trying to from experience.
Yeah.
You know. All right. So Mav, what have we got coming up next? We've got the monthly income after tax. So this is interesting too. So we've got one of the adults on 110. Is that pretty normal? We think for a male. So if we're going to say
Yeah.
that's the male,
Yeah.
and then we've got obviously the wife is earning 90,
Yep.
which is still pretty good money. So combined, what are they? It's
Or
200.
she could be
200.
working, 0.8, like 4 days a week or 3 days a week and earning slightly less. So we see a bit of that as well, especially if you've got 2 kids, to be working both full-time, it's probably you have to be older kids.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because they're not 1 and 2 years old, are they? Because she's at home. I say she. I say the mother. I'm going to get a lot of backlash about that. The mother is going to be at home nursing her children. All right, Mav. So deposit needed to save up. So we're looking at a purchase price. We didn't say this. Purchase price of $1 million.
$1 million. That's right.
Now, I did some research this morning. And you get fuck all for $1 million, don't you?
Yeah. It depends the area as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I searched, I just did 3195 Morty Alec Mentone.
And you're
And
not buying for $1 million.
no.
No.
Fuck no.
That's maybe a 3-bedroom unit in the area there or something
You
like
might look, you might get a 3-bed, 1 bath with
Yeah, right.
maybe 1 car space. They're looking at townhouses.
Townhouses, yeah.
And a lot of them are just stacked together
Yeah,
like you wouldn't believe. So,
interesting.
dense urban
It's tough.
living. It is.
So
I mean, it doesn't sound very good all round, does it? I mean, it's pretty depressing.
that. Well, but that's where your buyer's advocates would push you out of that property. They say, look, it's a nice property. It's $1 million. It's in the suburb you want.
There's no
but
value in it, though, is there?
There's not much growth in it yet.
No,
Yeah.
no.
yeah, that's a good point.
All right, so we said they've got $200,000 in annual income. So
Yep.
the deposit they need to save up, purchase price of $1 million. So they need
So they need $1,060,000 for the funds needed to buy that property.
Right,
And
so
now this has included that 5-6% based on the stamp duty.
Yep.
Yep.
So they don't qualify for any sort of government funding because of where they're buying and how much they're buying.
Purchase price.
Purchase price is the
They
big one.
probably would have
Yeah.
got that on their first home anyway. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Correct.
All right. So they're going to
So
borrow.
the loan there, 800,000. That's the income that they need to have to
Yep.
be able to borrow that 800,000, which means that the deposit, which is the next slide, Mav, it's 260.
260K. Are we presuming that they had that 260K from the previous house, or are they leaving that?
You'd hope so.
Are they,
you hope so.
Are they leaving that house as an investment, and
Yep.
they're looking at moving on to a better family
Yep,
home? Although
correct.
we've just established that $1 million gets you
yeah.
bugger all.
Yeah, they can.
Oh, that's I'm
Potentially
so
selling.
I feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no government guarantee because they're non-first home buyers, but so it could be family guarantee
Yeah.
or equity in their previous property.
Wow, it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? It is mind-boggling.
Or going above 80% and paying insurance if you've got the borrowing capacity.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, Mav. So for them to save the deposit
Yep.
at what did we say?
So-
12.5 grand a month.
Yep. That's after tax.
Yep.
With that car loan of 6.
Yep.
Now living expenses, the banks on average roughly is about 5,000 a month.
Because of the
Yeah.
family and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
If these guys didn't actually have a house that they're currently living in, or something were to happen where they had to sell their old property,
Yep, they're
whatever
renting.
it is, they're
Yep.
renting at the moment. So this gives a bit of a good example on how much they can save and how long it will take.
All right, Mav, hit us. It's going to take them 5 years at
5 years.
$54,000 a year to save up for their deposit for their house. Now, the kids are now 11, and they're probably looking at private schools. You know,
Well, there's going to be a hit on that,
Yeah,
pressure
yeah.
on there.
there's all this. Yeah, there's all this stuff that you got to factor in. So if you sit down, and I'm a big advocate for this, is sitting down with your partner, your wife, and having what they call a date night and going over your financial status and planning ahead. You know, it's not just 6 months, it's 12 months, it's 5 years. It's like, where do we want to be in 5 years? Now, this couple here, in 5 years, they're going to be renting at $2,400 a month, and it's going to take them 5 years to save up to buy that $1 million home. And which what we just said, $1 million doesn't buy you a lot, especially in certain suburbs. So for $1 million, what are we looking at? House and land package, 40 minutes out of town, an hour and a half out of
Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah.
you know,
Well,
which brings all these other problems and pressures of transportation and time in the car, and you know, travel costs, petrol's going up, and childcare and
Yeah, electricity, utilities, everything. Yeah.
it
So,
just
so
compounds.
maybe these are the people that aren't selling. They're holding onto their properties because they can't upsize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I hope they sat down and had a date night and said, look, I don't think we can do it, love. Let's
Not
just
yet.
stay here. Let's just no private school for the kids, unfortunately. We won't be going to Fiji this year, all right? And let's just knuckle down, you know, and sit it out, wait.
Well, I think the points I've done over the last year, you see the orbital like this, they want to do something, and when you do the reality, you do the numbers, unless
Yeah.
they've got some help from family, hang on, I can't help you. There's little things you do, like those debts, we can clear those, we can save a bit, we can pay mortgage insurance. There's little things, but in the short term, they're probably not taking action.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying, that a lot of people now, that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
And they need to be looking forward 1 or 2 years and setting these targets and setting these savings goals.
Making some
you know,
sacrifices,
and making
yeah.
some sacrifices.
That's right.
Which hopefully in turn is going to bring the inflation rate down from what we started at 7, we're now at 4, but we're still not out of the woods yet. You know, so it's a lot to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, so Ted and I have been quite busy, but it's a lot about educating at the moment. You know, a lot of the appointments about going through the reality of what they can actually do and what are their next steps and their plans and how to get there as well.
Because I think a lot of people just go, well, look, if I'm earning a $120 and my wife's earning 80, and there's 200 grand, that's a lot of money. So no, it's not. If you look at what we've just said,
What you need to spend, yeah.
it gets sucked up pretty quickly in living expenses.
That's right.
And you've got to make a lot of sacrifices to save 54 grand a year. You know, it's incredible. This podcast is brought to you in part by Buckfast. What is Buckfast, you ask? Well, let me tell you, it's better known as Bucky, and it's an internationally enjoyed, unique tasting tonic wine. It's equally rich in heritage as it is in taste. It packs a punch from 15% alcohol and about the same amount of caffeine as a well-known drink that gives you wings. Buckfast's enjoyment is only rivaled by its versatility from the cooking pot to the wine or cocktail glass. Drink it straight, mix it in a Negroni, or use it as a marinade. Available Australia-wide and distributed by Beeblebrox Beverages. Visit beeblebrox.com.au to find your closest stockist and buckfast.com for cocktail and recipe ideas. Just a caveat on our listeners that a lot of people don't realise that we're recording here in Melbourne. So we're referencing Melbourne a lot, obviously. Now, it's probably not that different between a lot of other capital cities, Sydney, Brisbane.
Price-wise, I'd say Sydney's slightly higher, and then the rest would be
Slightly lower.
maybe Brisbane's catching up to Melbourne, but still be less. So those prices would be Melbourne housing unit prices.
And of course they're general, and any advice that we give on here is general.
Yep.
So you can take it and use it how you wish.
Yeah.
But
I did talk about a caveat earlier to Nick on the slide.
we won't be held liable for anything.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it is educational. I'm sure our listeners are getting something out of it. Now we're going to jump back into another example, another scenario. So what have we got up next?
So
we got the borrowing capacity.
that's what follows now. What we wanted to show, and Mav, if you want to go next, is how it differs between each lender in terms of the borrowing capacity. So if you can see that we have a range of lenders there. It's probably about 20 that I could fit in. And this lists from maximum borrowing capacity to the least. So we range from the top at there's a bank called Teachers Mutual Bank. They're a mutual bank.
Yep.
And you've got 850 there, all the way ranging down to 780.
Can you explain a mutual bank to our listeners, as opposed to a commercial bank?
Generally, they were credit
good
unions
question.
that have merged lately, because a lot of the bigger mutuals are credit unions that have merged together. So if I look at that list, Heritage Bank was a credit union, Teachers Mutual.
Does that mean they're not for profit?
If community-based or industry-based. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So at the top we've got the teachers.
Yeah, we've got teachers,
That's teachers, health
teachers,
professionals,
Yep.
firefighters,
Yep.
Unibank.
Yep.
But that's just this scenario. It's not always they're up the top, but this was more to show that people on a certain income with certain commitments, it does vary what each bank will give you. So that previous slide might have showed they needed 800,000. So if in this scenario, if this was their capacity and they went down to Commonwealth, they might only get 790, whereas if they went to NAB, they might get 820. So it will vary between the banks. They have different things. Some with kids are worse, some with living expenses are worse, some with other commitments.
So the range there from top to bottom is 780 to 850.
850.
Yeah. So 70,000.
Big difference.
It's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, if someone wanted that little bit extra and went to those bottom lenders, they wouldn't get it, thinking they can't borrow it, but possibly they can go to another lender and get a bit more.
But are they going to qualify with the bottom one the same way they're going to qualify with the top one? There's not going to be any difference. It's just which bank they choose to
Well,
go
the
to.
information they provide is the same, but based on the bank's policy of how they assess what they can afford, some banks are more generous than others.
Yeah.
Okay. And you as mortgage brokers, are you going to point them in any direction, or are you just going to say these are your options based on your borrowing capacity?
Not necessarily. I think so we have this thing that we follow called the best interest duty, where we every time we have conversation with clients, we're asking a certain set of questions to understand what they need from their loan, whether they need an offset or it's a fixed or variable, or if it's a interest rate that's more important, et cetera, et cetera. So then based on what their requirements are, then we then get into a position where we look at lenders that can fit what they want.
You might start that everyone wants the cheapest rate and the lowest fees, which is great. But if that lender won't give you as much another lender and you want a bit more, you might prepare to sacrifice a little higher rate to borrow a bit more, or you might want a certain feature on your loan. So it does vary. That's part of why we're so busy, is that you can't just walk to one lender and get everything you want. You might need to shop around or look at different options to get what you want.
And that's a lot of what you're doing, is collating the information, the figures, and then just shopping it around. It's like, who's going to take this?
Yeah, and this software that Nick's brought up on the screen is software that we use. It's called Quickly, but it's good for us that we can punch in one scenario and it spits out every lender's options rather than running 30 different calculators.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
This was the exact example that we did before with buying the $1 million property. The family.
Okay, so up the top there in the top three is we've got Macquarie up there that they're going to lend 820 based on the earning capacities. What did we say the purchase price was? The purchase price $1 million or
million.
it was $1 million?
Yep, correct.
Okay, and they said, didn't we say it was 200,000 or 255?
Yep, it's about 260 funds.
If they
needed.
borrowed 800, yeah.
Okay, all right. Have you got any preferences? I think we talked about this previously. You got any favourites?
A little anti Big Four, but the Big Four have got some.
When you say a little anti, is there
Maybe it's a bit more than.
is there a bad taste in your mouth and just this
I think
general
that's everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
general disdain for the it's just
Yes.
astonishing profits. It's great if you're a shareholder, but not if you're.
But in saying that,
If you're a
some of these
customer.
lenders on there that you might not know as well are actually sometimes owned by the big banks as well. So
Okay, give me an example of something that we didn't know on that list right there.
Suncorp recently were purchased by ANZ.
Yep.
Wow, I did not know that.
Commonwealth Bank bought Bank West.
Yep.
Adelaide Bank and Bendigo Bank merged.
Yep. You got NAB owning UBank and
Yep.
Citibank there, but yeah.
Yes, NAB bought
Everybody's just
Citibank.
buying each other up, aren't they? They're
Yeah.
just
Yeah, Bank of Queensland,
big
Virgin, and ME Bank are all under the
under
same
one.
umbrella. Virgin,
Sorry, explain to me again because I think I've got superannuation with Virgin. Who did you say that they were tied in with?
Bank of Queensland.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
their home loan, they get funding by Bank of Queensland.
Oh, right.
Well, Virgin's always been a white label product. So they always
Explain a white label
So
product.
they
It's
have
not
the
for the rich
branding.
and white.
Yeah, well, they've got the branding.
Yeah.
And we've got the customer base.
Yep.
And they usually just partner up with any department or any business
to
that's
fund it.
already
Okay.
to fund it. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Even the airlines or
Yeah,
the
pre
funding, everything.
COVID, it was a pretty strong brand with points.
That's right.
And when
Yeah.
COVID hit, Virgin product, no one
airlines.
wanted it
Yeah.
because they think, well, I don't want points. But
Exactly.
I guess it's coming back.
That's right. Yeah.
That's interesting. Interesting to know. All right, what have we got next? We've got another scenario.
Yeah. So this one here, this is if we're building the family home.
So this is first home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
They want a land and house package.
This one here will be Metro purchasing again, building in Metro once again in the scenario. We also got that car loan, $600 a month as a repayment, and the 6,000 credit card is just a standard. 2 adults, 2 kids. So first slide, I think we've got the income.
Mav? You're right there, mate. Come on, let's make finance fun, buddy. All right, so we've got
So this scenario you're 100 and then 90.
So what have we got? Sorry, family, 2 kids, 2 adults.
Yep.
First home. So Metro Melbourne, which, how far out is?
Yeah,
When does Metro stop? Where does it stop?
Getting out. Clyde, getting Pakenham.
Clyde,
Actually,
yeah.
I think Pakenham's about your limit.
Yep.
And once you go out to Warragul, you're regional
Yep.
in the east.
In the east side, yep. Even
West,
up,
you're probably getting. I think Bacchus Marsh is just outside. I think
Yep.
that's classed
Yeah, that's
as
right.
regional.
Yeah.
So Sunshine.
It's getting a bit out, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
from where we are now. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah, so even being able to buy for 800 might be a little bit tougher. You having to go out to the outskirts or right close to that.
It'd be a smaller
Metro.
house. It's not
Yeah,
a
it was gonna be
double-story
smaller.
mansion. That'd
Yep.
be a pretty standard house.
It's a. I
Slightly
mean,
smaller
but it's a
land as
new.
well.
It's a. What are we saying like 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, or are we talking like single level? Obviously.
You could go
probably
4,
double,
but you're
yeah.
buying. You're not putting the gold taps and the granite bench top.
But the thing is, that's the thing is like first home buyers. You shouldn't have the luxury, should you?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I can just see the wife
Yeah.
nagging the husband. Oh my God, I want this bench top and.
Well, he might want his man cave.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I was going to say I'll probably get more
looking
backlash
to
from
set
the
up in
female, more backlash from female listeners
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
It's like Jesus.
Okay.
Okay. So the dude, he's not going to get his man cave. They might get a big tally if they can afford it
Yeah.
at the end of it. You know? And just take it. You've got to start somewhere, don't you?
As long as they don't do the buy now, pay later.
Yeah, that's right.
Harvey Norman job, because then in fact
You got the
borrowing
afterpay.
capacity.
Well, there you go. Another top tip: buy now, pay later.
Yeah,
Bad.
avoid it. Yeah.
Bad. I think you did an article in your recent thing about buy now. Anyway,
Yeah,
we'll
the
go-
banks are not liking it.
We'll go into that later. But it's not actually technically classed as a loan because there's no interest being charged. Is that correct?
Oh, it's like they treat it as like a credit card. Yeah.
So the banks, are, regardless of how the financial sector sees it, the banks are saying, well, that's a liability.
Yeah.
Or
It's
credit
how
score
much-
too, it hurts.
Yeah.
Hurts your credit score.
Yeah, that's right. And also how much you can draw on. And goes back to that credit card that we're talking about. They don't look at what you spend, but the actual limit of the credit card.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing as the zip. If you can draw 2,000 out of it buying a new telly tomorrow, then they'll put that into
Yeah.
their consideration.
And then you miss a couple of payments for whatever
That's it.
reason, and then boom, another couple of bad
Yeah.
red
Credit
ticks.
score goes down. Yeah, that's
All
it.
right,
Red
so
ticks.
back into
The next one.
come on, Mav.
We've got land and construction. So in this example, we've got land of 400, construction of 400. You can probably build maybe a townhouse with that. You can probably reach 3-4 bedrooms, but yeah, once again, something medium or basic. Now, because the land and they're a first home buyer, we're in Metro as well. Now, it's the land, the stamp duty is based on the land value.
It's just the
If we're
land
doing
only, not the house
the
that you
build,
put
yeah.
on it.
You have to build only if you're doing a land and construction. If you're buying it off the plan, then it's based on the whole lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Or it's at the time you buy it, whatever value it's at.
Yep.
So if I
Or you sign
buy,
the contract.
so if I buy off the plan before construction, I'm
on the
paying
value.
less than if it's fully constructed and I buy it then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And then with that land itself there, we've got the stamp duty, similar thing, no stamp duty. So then you've got the standard purchasing costs, legal fees, and that's the $5,000. Now, this example, I've included this thing called the First Home Buyer's Grant. We touched upon it.
FHBG.
Yeah.
Yep.
We touched on it last podcast, but they changed it now in terms of the name of what it is.
So they just changed the name, or have they changed the formula?
And they changed a bit of the criteria in this new financial year.
Okay, do tell.
We've got the next slide. And I'll show it up a bit later, but they've introduced, and one of the big things is before you could only go through with this scheme if you're a citizen. This financial year, as of 2 weeks ago, they're allowing permanent residents as well to be part of
really?
the scheme. Yeah.
And the other one that was interesting, if you had a house 10 years ago, that you come back to being a first home buyer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of...
So it resets.
there's a lot of criteria around it, but let's say you had a house 10 years ago, sold up and didn't buy again and just couldn't get back in the market.
Yeah.
They're trying to help those people.
Okay.
Because I often have a couple where one is a first home buyer and they say, my husband bought a house 10 years ago. And I go, you don't qualify. But for this new scheme, they will look at if you had a house more than 10 years. You probably need to check it and read the website, but there is...
Okay, well, here's a scenario for you. I'm a Kiwi, and my Australian wife has a house. She sells that, and we buy a new house together. Do I qualify? Because technically I've never owned a home before.
So that's a good scenario. That's quite, I wouldn't say typical, but we do hear that one where it's one person doesn't qualify, one does. It's only for this scheme, and it's got that time period. So you'd want to check the details on it.
Okay.
But if it's within, after the 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, but if I've never,
Potentially.
never owned
Yep.
a home, I qualify or I don't qualify, or so we qualify
Yeah.
as a couple.
If she had the
close
place more than 10 years ago and didn't buy another one since.
Yep.
Oh, so if she's got an existing home, that negates the fact that I haven't owned one in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And what's other interesting is that with the guarantee now is prior to this financial year, you could do a joint application, but it had to be someone that you're married or de facto to.
Yep.
After this financial year, it's anyone. So you've got friends, siblings, uncles, aunties.
Why are you shaking your head for?
I don't like this one. It's
What is-
future problems I could see with this one. Yeah.
Please explain.
Oh, it's just, you say you buy it with friends,
Yeah.
siblings. You don't always have the same plan going forward. And
Oh, so you're saying that it's like having a partnership in a company.
Yeah.
One guy dicks you over, it's just going to turn to shit. And that's what you're saying.
It's not always. I've seen it even between mother and son, and when they get a new partner, they want to go a different direction. And the plans originally were we were going to do this with the property, and
Yeah.
one person doesn't want to sell, and the other one wants to sell because they want to buy a new house with their new partner. So it causes friction, and so you really got to. When I've got clients wanting to do it for that, I just tell them to be really careful.
Yeah.
Talk
You gotta
about
think
it, their
about it.
future, not just their immediate short term.
Well, 9 out of 10 scenarios are going to turn to shit, aren't they? You know, you just got to look at business stats on
Yes.
partnerships.
Yep.
It just don't do it. Don't do it.
As long as there's a plan to unwind and how to unwind, I think that's quite important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's discussed up front.
Well, it's got to be a legal document, doesn't it? Doesn't it have to?
If it's with someone you trust and buying a property with them, hoping you
Oh, it doesn't. Man, that's the
Yeah.
thing. Trust.
Yeah, just
It's a
yeah,
big
be
word,
careful
isn't
with
it?
these ones. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big word.
So
Anyway,
there's a spot for it, but yeah, be careful.
yeah.
Well, it's a bit like there's a government one out now where the government owns part of the property. Have you
oh
heard
really?
of that one?
No.
So it's a little bit like this scheme where they're trying to help people in to get into the market. Where they'll say, well, if you can't afford that $1 million house, but you can afford the 750, we'll buy 20% of the property, and you can just borrow the 750. The problem I have with that one is the government always owns part of that property. It's a home buyer scheme, so you have to live in it. So I've had one recently where the client wanted to move out and he wasn't allowed to move out. So we had to get out. We had to refinance the loan out of it so he could rent out the property. So just be careful about the fine print with those government schemes. This one's not as bad because you own the whole property, but with the part ownership one, it's a good scheme for certain situations, but be careful.
So that means if you buy a property for say $750,000, or sorry, $1 million, and the government owns $250,000 of that, their chunk of that is going to increase in value over
Correct, yeah.
time.
As a percentage.
Yep.
Yeah,
correct.
there is some rules around that and criteria, but in guidelines. But
So if you want to buy them out in 10 years, you're going to have to come up with $275,000 or $300,000 or more.
I think you can sell it, but if you're changing from a home to investment, the government, I think, wants you to get out of
Yeah.
the scheme that helped you get in.
Right. And that's the reason why you guys are here, to make your customers aware
Yeah.
of these shitty little scenarios that could pop up.
Yeah, I mean, the intention of the government is to help, or at least it's perception of helping people, but I just tell people, just read it fully through to make sure it's what you want.
If it seems too good to be true.
Sometimes,
eh?
yes.
Exactly.
It's always good to know what are the possibilities and what are the things that can happen. You're prepared for it. And
Yeah, I think
that's all it is.
it's the biggest investment you're going to make. I think you should spend as much time as you need to get your head around every scenario. And even scenarios of, hey, if we get pregnant or something, how's that going to impact us? How that's going to impact our earning capacity? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can't plan for. You can't, it just pops up in life. But if you've got a good understanding of what you're getting yourself into, well, then you've got that realistic outlook about what can and can't happen. And it's just education. It's just being smart. And that's what we're trying to do here, is make sure that our listeners and viewers have this information that they didn't already know.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to our family home on the outskirts of Melbourne.
Yep. So
An
in this
hour and a
example,
half.
after the
An hour and a half out of town.
after the grant, there's another thing that they, being the first home buyers, they can potentially look at seeing if they can qualify for the first homeowners grant. The first homeowners grant is where if you build a new property or if you're buying something that's brand new, you in the metro it's 10,000 and in regional Melbourne it's 20,000.
Right. I thought what you've just told me was the same thing as the FHBG. So there's two different schemes.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So
Yeah, there's one for single parents.
Yeah.
There's a handful of different ones out there.
handful
Okay,
of
so
different
you're
ones.
saying that this scenario here, they may also qualify for another first home buyers grant.
Well, this one here is actually 3
Yeah.
government incentives. There's a stamp duty waiver.
Oh, that's true. Yep.
Yep.
There's the low deposit scheme, and then there's a grant. So they're actually getting 3 incentives from the government here.
Oh,
I've talked right at the start about the incentives that are holding those prices for those cheaper properties, because you have to get those cheaper properties, and so there's more people that qualify.
is it working? Is the
To a
system working?
degree, without it, a lot of these people aren't getting in.
And then they're still renters, and then we've got a rental shortage. So
Well, it's worse than what people are saying, a housing crisis, and people can't afford, but it would be worse without it. So
yeah, exactly. Well, that's good to know. Something the government's doing
something
is
to
actually
keep it up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Right, Mev.
So in this scenario, the next one there, you only need 35,000 as a deposit.
So now we're talking realistic numbers, 35 grand.
Can I say I can handle 35 grand? That's easy.
First time buyer that.
Yeah.
So they have generally even that's tight for some of them,
Yeah.
but they can get.
So as you're saying, this could be immigrants that have landed here. They've got permanent residency, so they qualify for the grants. They just need 35 grand.
Yep. And that income as well. They can do that. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's back that up a little bit as well too. So, immigrants, they're earning 80 and 90 grand a year.
Yep.
That's a fairly good wage.
Yep.
So they're obviously they're educated. They're in a good job.
It could be a nurse.
Yeah,
A lot of
the nurses take
earning about 100,000. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty. I didn't realize. I thought they were on much less than that.
Yeah. They work the overtimes and the
Yeah.
allowances, night shifts. Yeah, it adds up.
Well, they need to, don't they? All right. So 35. So how long is that going to take for them? Because the thing is that $800,000 today, by the time they save the deposit up, it may be. Mav, how long is it going to take for them to save the deposit up?
Let's go continue.
It's going to take them. Dun, 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 it's only going to take them 8 months.
Yep.
Wow. I thought maybe going on the previous ones, we're looking 2 years. So 800,000 today is not 800,000 in 2 years. It's probably 850, isn't
Correct.
it?
Yeah.
Which means that all those figures go to shit and they're going to need to earn some more money.
And we're hoping that, during that time, maybe the interest rates are different, not as high as what it is.
So with all
where
the
it's
hurt that we're going through at the moment with the interest rates going up, we've probably got another 2 rate rises, maybe.
Maybe.
It's got to get to a crescendo before it starts coming back down again.
Yeah.
What are we looking? What's the outlook on
I'm
interest
telling my
rates in the
clients
next
not
2 years?
to expect rate reductions. You might see go up and down, but it's not going to move much. The 5-year fixed rates are in around 6%. So that's a guide, and that's not set by 1 or 2 banks. It's a lot of them. And they spend money on a department to do the research and forecasting. It's not one bank. We're talking about 40 banks. And they're all in and around that 6 to 6.5 for 5-year fixed.
Really?
So that sort of tells you that if we're at sort of 5, 9, 6% now, and you're relying on rates to go down, I wouldn't count on it.
So if you're struggling, as we said, with $1,500 extra a month on
Get
your
used to it.
mortgage, get used to it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you might, you talk about a couple of rate rises and you hear different things every second day, but let's say it does go up once or twice, and it might come back once or twice, but it's not going to go back down to 3 or 4%.
Well, it's not going to take you $1,500 a month down to $500, is it?
No.
That's a bridge too far, So there's a lot of short-term pain that we can see is going to be long-term pain, unless you start buckling up, because
Or get used to this is the norm. This rate, the 6% is quite normal. It's not high.
wages aren't going up.
Yeah. Well, over time, that's where you probably see where people are having to find ways to increase their income. Maybe take up double shift. You might have to work on the weekends, et cetera, et cetera.
OnlyFans.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
There's a lot of people out there that like feet and other stuff. we talked about that previous.
That's those bad habits that you spend your money on to. Yeah, you could cut back on those.
Well, yeah, if you're wasting money on OnlyFans, there's free porn out there. You don't have to be paying for it. But good on everybody on OnlyFans. I mean,
making the money, finding in different ways.
I'm not quite there yet. I don't have to.
Keep going to the gym.
Maybe I can become an influencer of some sort. Wow.
I am getting these posts that come up of older guys that are going to the gym, and I'm thinking, what am I looking at that's showing me that?
Oh, really?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, what, you've been searching something on the toilet in the morning? There's a jacked up dudes.
Your phone
or
knows a lot, doesn't it?
Protein. Oh, it's scary.
Yeah.
But it's also, as we said, it's also good, because if I'm thinking about something or we're talking about something, and then I go, hey, Google already knows what I'm thinking, and it's great. It saves me time and money.
Yeah. It gives you,
I can't see any downside yet. I mean, I can understand how AI is going to cause a few problems, but it's also going to be great for a lot of industries, for just stuff that you don't even think about now. So
yeah, I've bought a few things off those ads, like those Instagram or Facebook ads. Like, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
it looks pretty good.
Well, that's the
Until
thing.
you get it and you're like, oh, maybe not.
I bought something during COVID, and it was supposed to be 5 meters long, and it turned up it was less than a meter long. It's like, you bastards. Anyway, where are we up to?
So the next one
We've got one more scenario. I like that scenario, but
yeah, that's more realistic, but that price range is a struggle. But again, they've been talking about sacrifices, and it's their first home. Well, maybe they've got not to get that perfect house. It's going to be a normal house.
Did we? Yeah, no gold tax.
Or further out.
Did we know what the average income was?
Yeah, I actually looked this up. They say it's a medium because it's quite skewed with all the CEOs and high net worth. That brings it up to, and it's about 90. But if they look at the medium, it's sitting about 80,000. So if you're looking at the lowest and the top, and
Okay.
whatever's in the middle number,
So about 80 grand.
is about 80 grand.
Yeah, so if you had anything on over 80, you're doing it right, which is good.
So this scenario, we talk about not much deposit, but the income maybe it's higher than the average. So they might be pushed back
That's
to 7.6, not through the deposit, but more about income.
Yep. Okay. Well, as I say, that's very promising, isn't it? From but once again, you're living on the outskirts. I mean, but then again, you've got a family with 2 kids. You've got different priorities. You've got so
You could be buying those townhouses you were talking about that are in the small block and double level, that sort of thing. 2 bedrooms.
not with fucking 2 kids. No.
Yes.
Nah.
That's probably where we're headed.
No way. All right. What's the next scenario? We've got one more to go.
So this is actually just just next one, Mav. This is a chart of the eligibility. So
Okay. National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation.
yeah, it's a funny name that's the name that they have as the corporation that's helping out.
An interesting point, just that deposit, 5%. So I'm telling my clients, regardless of each start saving. That's one of the things you're going to have to do. But 5% of whatever you want. So if it's 800 grand, you need 40 grand. And that was pretty much, the last scenario was 800, you needed 35.
Yeah.
So they want you to have 5%. So if without even having to think too much, 5%, whatever you want, that's your goal. That's your
Because normally
minimum.
it was 10%, wasn't it, for a long time?
Oh, that was reading me talking about mortgage insurance. So this is more for the government schemes where you don't have to pay mortgage insurance.
Yep.
They still want you to have 5% genuine savings.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is 5% isn't a lot, but if you're going in with no deposit and you're borrowing the max, and as you say, there's no equity in it, and even if you have to sell it a year later, you're going to be losing money on it.
Yeah, or the ones where parents are getting involved, they still want you to have 5% savings. That herd money we talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, explain to me what I'm looking at.
So this is a table of the criteria for this scheme. So we talked about the first home guarantee, our first home buyer guarantee.
Yep.
Which is the first one on the left hand. There's another one which is also for the first home buyers. In this situation, in scenario, it's for regional. So we're looking at metro, we're looking at regional, and the difference between the two.
All right, so explain regional would be out
further.
Ballarat.
Further
Are we looking
back.
like
Yeah,
Bacchus or Bacchus Marsh?
Bacchus Marsh to the west, and I think it's Warrigal to the east.
Yeah. I
So
think
it's
it goes all the
about
way to the end.
About an hour out of town. Yeah.
Yeah, give or take.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
That's right. And then you can see that there's just different limitations. So this financial year, the first home owners grant, which is in the metro area, they have 35,000 spots across and a few lenders. I think they have about 44 different lenders that can facilitate the scheme. And the regional is only 10,000. So the main two difference between the two around that.
I think there's a price limit too, isn't it? It might be less regional, but that makes sense because you can buy cheaper regional as well.
Okay. Is there a reason why they've got limited places, limited?
I think they come out with enough spots that they think,
Yeah.
and like through COVID, there was heaps, and they just kept bringing it out every
Yeah.
6 months. They
It
released
started
more
with
spots.
10,000
Okay.
as the first one. It started with 10,000.
It just seems, from my point of view, it just seems silly to put a cap on it or to put a certain amount of allocations. Is there the demand?
Through COVID, when those prices got, yes, definitely they run.
Yeah.
Some banks were running out of spots, so they had to, we weren't going to the best bank. You were going to who's got a spot left.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe they're trying to create urgency. I'm not sure, but or maybe they didn't know how popular it would be. But there's a significant number now. I think that's national, but I think they'll just release more when they need to. If it's working well and there's no dramas, I think they'll release more.
Okay. All right. What have we got?
I think the
Sorry, Mav.
sorry, I think I was just going to say that with so we've got the first homeowners in the regional, and then the last one is the family home guarantee. Now this is an interesting one. So this is where if you're a single parent or a single legal guardian, that you're an auntie or an uncle for a child and you're a legal parent,
Yep.
you only need 2%,
Wow.
and the guarantee and the government guarantees that 18% virtually.
Okay, so they're helping everybody in that demographic.
They're trying, but
Yeah.
there's I haven't had too many qualify there. You
So
look at that income, 125,000 is a max, and you can only borrow sort of roughly 5 times income.
Yeah.
Most single parents aren't earning 120,000.
No.
They might be earning 40, and then you can borrow 200,000. You go,
something.
what are they going to? So it's there, but I haven't done one
It's
yet.
tougher, and that's why it's less spots and less places. And
Yeah.
most of the time you're probably looking at something because of that income. We're talking only about maybe 4 or 5 times the income at the moment. So you're probably really only looking at properties around that, 500, 600.
Yeah, so and a single parent on good income. So it's unique. Not too many qualify in there.
Yeah, and then you look at the monthly repayments on that mortgage. It puts a lot of stress on them, doesn't it? You know, puts a lot. Even if you are earning a $1.25.
It could be someone's getting good child maintenance, child support,
Yeah.
possibly to help with their costs, and got family support to look after kids so they can work full time. So it's quite unique, that one, that not too many qualify to get a reasonable house anyway.
All right, what do we got next?
This is the last scenario. So this is a more realistic scenario. We've got non-first home buyers again. We've got 2 kids, but the adult 2 is working part-time. So we're maybe about 3 days a week, 3-4 days a week.
That seems on point, doesn't it? Seems very realistic.
Yeah, very realistic. And then I've got that 6K. Then we've got this thing called the private health insurance. We touched base this last time, where even just your private health insurance adds on top of your borrowing capacity. So if they didn't, for example, most people actually have private health insurance, but if they didn't have private health insurance, that's $200 a month that is added to that borrowing capacity, which is probably about maybe 15.
I'm probably not going to agree with you that most people have private health. I mean, if we did the stats on it,
Oh yeah,
Mav, can
Fair
you
enough.
just do a sidebar? Can you Google the amount of Australians with private health insurance? Because we talked about this earlier about Medicare versus private health, and we were talking about a higher income bracket, which me personally, I pay about $5,500 a year for Medicare.
Yeah, the Medicare levy.
Now, if I don't have private health insurance, that's what I pay. But if I have the basic health insurance, it's only reduced by another $2,000. Now, a basic policy, and it can be just extras or hospital only, is $80 a month or something. So I'm still all right. So what do we got here? So
I think Nick wins just
14.4. Well, you're probably 60.
55%.
There you go. So
55%. Wow.
14.
He did say most, did he?
40, you're right. I'll take that back. 14.42 million Australians have private health insurance. So that's 55% of the
Yeah,
population.
that's surprising.
You only win by about 50%.
Well,
I mean 5%.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, to be fair, I was thinking a higher number, but yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe 60,
Well,
70%.
maybe that number's dropping. That's people are cutting back. Who knows?
It could be.
Yeah.
They're trying to
Well, I
work
mean,
their borrowing capacity.
that's the thing is if you need to cut back, wouldn't that be one of the things you would cut back? You know, if you're paying, say, we looked at that a family of 2 with 2 kids. Sorry, a family of 4 with 2 kids. They're probably paying on a monthly basis $600 to $700 for a good private health insurance.
That's right, actually.
Well, that's $700 that goes into the mortgage. You know, so.
Correct.
Well, that's why the banks now are taking that into account when they work out how much they can borrow. They say you've got this extra cost, so you borrow less.
Yeah. As I said, for the discussion that we were having previous about my scenario, is this: I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. You know, I get it. You get a certain level of care with private, and then technically you're getting the same level of care with public. Although you may be sharing a room with somebody, but it just if anybody is out there listening that can really explain this to me, I want to get them in here and sit them down and have a good discussion
public
about
system
this,
works.
because
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of listeners that are in the same scenario I'm in, and they're going, well, what are the benefits? What are the upside? What are the downside? And it's probably something that we don't know the answers to, but it would be a great podcast for our listeners to just get to the nuts and bolts of it, you know.
I think there is a threshold on income that if you're above a certain amount that you should have at least basic, because you're paying for it through tax, or you might as well get some benefit. But I don't know, maybe it's around that 80,000 mark. I'm not sure what it is, but I've had some single applicants who don't have health insurance that are on 100,000, and I would imagine through their tax they're paying that premium effectively, so they might as well have the cover. But if it's family cover and extensive cover, then it's a bit different. But if you
It's
get
a
an
whole
expert.
I'd anybody listening, I'd love to get you in here, have a sit down on that. That's a good one. Right, Matt, back to our last scenario. It's interesting about private health. There's a lot of companies making a lot of money, eh? You know?
55%.
Wow.
There we go.
Right, so family of 2.
Oh,
Sorry, fam.
Drinks break.
Jesus, Mav. You're right. Do you need to take a break, mate?
No, that's all right. It's just a different software in the system.
No, blame Mav. Don't blame the software.
Blame the banks.
Yeah, blame the. The banks are probably listening to us right now. All right, here we go. Purchase a home of 750,000. So they're non-first home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit with a family of 4. That's a stretch. So, Mav, if you want to get those earnings up there, so they're earning, what did we say, close to 200 grand?
Yeah. So then,
Oh,
this one's a little bit less now.
Oh, so
right?
a little bit less. So
Yeah.
what have we got? 130, 135? Yeah.
135. Yeah. So this is probably a little bit more realistic. To people working part time, or you're just looking at more of the average. We were talking earlier about the average medium. It's probably this.
Yeah,
is where
well,
we're at.
and also the purchase price of what they're buying, like a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, shit, you probably in most cases might only get 1 bathroom, but everybody knows with a family of more than 2.
Yeah, you definitely need it.
All right, Mav, next slide, mate.
So this goes down to the purchase price. So this one, non-first home buyer, so you've got the stamp duty in there.
45 grand. It's a
45 grand.
big chunk of change, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many people do you think go to auctions and forget about the stamp duty
Oh yeah.
and go,
Yeah, a lot.
when they win an auction, they go, fuck.
Also, when they think
there's
of
another
the,
50 grand.
the percentages, we've been talking 80% of the time. It's
Yeah,
80%
that's right.
of the purchase price, in this case, not the funds needed. It's 80% of that purchase price.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so people think about saving 20%, but it's not just 20%, it's 25%. with
Yeah,
that stamp
factory
duty.
25.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
you need to add that 5% every time.
All right, so they total funds needed is 795.
So the max borrowing based on that income, well, we've got it at 530. So similar to the calculator that we looked at before.
Yep.
530 was the maximum. So the next one, there's 265,000 that needs to be saved, or from an equity or a previous sale if they don't have that home anymore.
Okay. Well, let's look at the side scenario. They've already got a home. They probably had their home for 10 years. Maybe they had a 1-bedroom unit when they first got married, and now they've got 2 kids.
Upsize.
That scenario sounds even worse than 2 kids with a single. Anyway, so you want to, if they've got an existing asset, say that's worth $400,000, right? Are the banks going to give them that $265 that they need for the deposit based on their existing dwelling?
Yeah, it's a good question. Here we're capped at the borrowing capacity. So if they've got no loans on that loan, or that unit is fully paid off,
Yep.
then we've got potential that we could use rental income from that property, as well as the equity as well from that. So potentially not having to save up that 265 straight up in cash, but they could utilize that equity in that $400,000 1-bedroom
When you
unit.
think about it, if they didn't have that, 265 is
It's
a big
lot,
chunk of
yeah.
change.
So then if we look at how long it'll take to actually save that amount,
Go on, Mav.
we've got 50,000. It's 5 years.
So another 5 years.
Yeah.
It's still that. You used to talk about saving 50,000 a year.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a lot of money to save in a year.
As I said, that's
People on that income.
so. What did we say? They're only on a 135. Yeah, so 50 cents, 60 cents out of every
I
dollar.
don't see it happening. There's some unique people to
So
do that.
yeah,
It's
so
not-
but
I
so
wouldn't
that
see many.
living expenses would need to be you would have to be really well
Tight
on
budget.
tight budget and everything. Yep.
Yeah,
4,000 a month.
it's grim viewing, isn't it? Wow.
It's 5 years, and you were saying before that 5 years in the 5 years that 750 will be on.
Or
Well,
you-
it's going to be. It's probably going to be 9, isn't it?
Well, you have got
So-
rent on there too, so that could be there moving back in with mum and dad or one of the in-laws to save $2,500 a month paying rent.
Yep, that works.
This is.
But mum and dad have got a big house
Yeah,
or
exactly.
a wing.
Two kids.
Exactly. They're going to have to love their grandkids. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's very true.
those grandparents out there that don't like kids,
Not full time.
and
Anyway.
Yeah.
they grimace every time they come around. Well, that's thank you for doing that. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it, and
Yeah, thanks
and
for
I hope our
Thanks for the
listeners.
opportunity. No, this is good.
I hope our listeners got something out of that. It's some of those scenarios are pretty grim. So I mean, looking forward to Mav and him getting into a house or a unit.
Yeah.
You know, it's wow.
Well, you start-
Dad's going to have to save a lot of money, isn't he?
We'll
Well,
start saving
hopefully
now.
Dad
Good.
started a while ago and he's got equity.
Yeah,
and if he
that's
did, you look at those price values, and that's why he's so Bav's still got to have the borrowing capacity, he's still got to work. But if Dad can help by using his equity, then he can get a foot in the door.
Yeah, so the sensible thing to do as a parent is to teach him what he needs to do and put those practices in place to save and to earn and understand
some
about
budgets.
a goal. Yeah, understand, teach your kids about money. You know, the Barefoot Investor has got some great books out there with some great lessons, and you start them young and they're going to learn all these good habits.
Yeah, that's right.
because I'm not going to just gift Mav a house. You know, he's going to have to understand what it takes to work, to earn, and to save.
Just on that, one of the things I sometimes see with clients, young couples come and see me, and they're saying, I'm not looking to buy a house straight away. I just want to know where I sit. And after our conversation, sometimes they have got some savings, they have got good income, they qualify the government. And after a chat for an hour and a half, the mindset changes. Actually, I can buy. There's others that don't qualify that we have to set them up, and that's around telling them. And what I find is that when you look at that budget of saving $50,000 a year, you go, no chance. But sometimes with a goal, that focus is easier. Whereas without that goal, saving $50,000 is never going to happen. It comes, it goes.
Well, as you said, those customers that you sit down with and they realise that they can buy, they've probably got all these habits and knowledge about money, and they're astute with their money. They don't waste it. They don't make frivolous purchases, and they're smart. And when they realise they can buy instead of continue renting, how good must that feel? That what they've learned and put in place is coming to fruition.
Oh, you see that mindset change. It's remarkable. I've done it, over 20 years, but I see clients that come in thinking, I'm just thinking about it, Ted. What do you? And then after the appointment, I get a phone call next week. We're out looking at houses. We found something we like. Hang on, slow down.
How exciting is that? Yeah.
But it shows you that mindset change of that. I think I can. I hope I can. But until I do qualify.
Yeah.
And some of those government incentives do help that people in that sort of 600 to 700 range.
And we talked about there's no wrong time to buy, is there?
No,
No?
not my opinion.
No.
If it's for the long term, if they're buying to hopefully make money and sell in a couple of years, they've got to be lucky.
Yeah.
Or good.
Yeah.
Yeah, or smart, exactly. And as you say, there's not those bargains going around. I mean, if you're buying to renovate, there's the tax.
Or the stamps and cost to get in, and then your agent fees to get out. Your best part of, if you're non-first time buyer, it's sort of 7-8%. You've got to make profit, and then you've got capital gains tax if you do make profit. So,
Yeah, they sting you every which way they can, eh?
unless it's a home. Yeah.
Bastards, yeah. Hey, fixed or variable? What's happening at the moment in the market? What are you guys seeing?
It's a common question.
So let's just to break it down, explain it. Fixed versus variable.
So a fixed rate you set for a period of time, 1 to 5 years generally. So if you've already got a loan and you want to fix it, you can do that instantly, and the rate won't move for this amount of term. And the 5-year rates we discussed before, in that sort of 6 to 6.5 with most banks, variable rates in about the same. So I'm saying to my clients, look, I'm not fussed either way, but you've got to have a reason to choose fix, and that's generally you're borrowing to your limit, and you can't afford for a rate to go higher. And it could be some of these people that are pushing themselves right to the limit. That what fixing will give them is de-risking that if rates go up, they're going to lose their house. So there's some people that, although I don't believe fully in fix, they should fix because they're high risk. Whereas some clients, they can easily, comfortably afford their loan, and if rates went up, they can still afford it. So if you fix it, I think you're betting against the bank if you're trying to beat the bank. So, but the other situation is people that borrow a lot of money that can't sleep at night or stress about debt. A fixing will give them peace of mind and comfort that, hang on, well, I borrowed a lot of money, but I can concentrate on my job because I've locked it in.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can meet that commitment.
There's no further surprises.
And possibly when it comes off fixed, I'm on a higher income. So maybe your younger clients that are progressing in their employment. So it's not all about the rate. It should be around their scenario and where their risk lies.
What's the normal term for fixing? What's average?
Yeah,
Well,
2 to 3
what
years.
it's been lately is 2 to 3 because they've been the cheaper rates.
Oh, okay.
Now the 5-year rates,
Yeah.
2 and 3 is still the cheapest.
Yep.
But the 5-year rates are pretty similar.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the fixed rates are no different to the variable rates at the moment? Is that what
They're
you're saying?
pretty similar.
They're quite similar. Yeah, that's right.
Maybe slightly higher.
What's
which
quite
slightly,
1 or 0.5 or
0.1, 0.2, 2, 0.5. The longer you go, the bigger the spread, and part of that's just the bank setting a rate that they're not. They don't know what it's going to be, so they maybe put a bit of buffer on it. But there's not a big difference between the two. But the other side of fixing, there's some negatives that you're locked in with a lender on a certain rate, and if you wanted to sell a place and rates actually go down, you might have to pay a fee to get out. So,
oh really? So they're going to sting you just to get out of the loan?
yeah. So one is thinking about why you're fixing, and then also about the term of what your plans are. If they're fairly certain, you can do longer fix, but if you're not sure, you probably wouldn't fix long term.
So you say the average is about 1 to 3 years, which is
But the most time we're seeing is 2 to 3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2 to 3.
But that's also based on the rates are slightly lower.
That's right. Yeah. There's a period of time last year where people wanted that 1 year because rates were just shooting up.
Yep.
So they want that security for 1 year, but
Or coming off that cliff.
Yeah, coming.
they were talking about their
That's
cliff
right,
exactly.
yeah. But yeah, no,
Okay,
2
so
3 years.
so variable rates, as we know, are basically what the market dictates. The RBA sets. Now, the RBA, what's the RBA rate at the moment? The cash rate, it's
4.1.
4.1.
Yeah. It's
So it just went up
standing there.
0.25.
Yeah, in
Last
June.
week?
Yeah.
In June.
In
No,
June.
last week was paused.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
It's the last
little
month.
bit of good news.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that already.
There's so many rate rises.
Woohoo!
Rate pauses.
Yeah. Oh, I tell you what, my Tuesday every month evolves around what's going to happen. You know, and
My
then
phone battery is the same.
that's
and then I get the letters from the bank. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I know what that fucking is. It's like, whatever, you know.
Yeah, well, our phones ring when there's a movement, and a lot of it's just around a lot of media, hype, people panicking, and we get the phone calls, so they just start coming through.
Well, a lot of people aren't getting their information from anywhere other than the media. You know,
that's true.
your average mortgage holder are just listening to the news. You know, and every month they've been seeing rate rises, and as you say, now a lot of people, it's starting to hit home.
Well, I think I can't remember if we talk about it, but I'm talking maybe before around the rates. Although they're not going up on mass on the news, indirectly the banks are dropping their discounts. So a client that saw me 3 months ago is not got a better deal than a client coming in now because the banks
That's
are
right,
off the
because
same
we said
discounts.
the sneaky bastards.
Yeah, so those ones when you talk about media, the media's not portraying that, and because technically they're not lifting their rates, they're just not giving as bigger discounts.
Why aren't the media doing that? When you think that they'd be picking up some sort of nice little fluff story saying, "Hey, the banks are doing more than what you think
I
they're
guess
doing."
It's harder to because it varies in different situations and scenarios, and I think over time they did it gradually, so it's hard to pinpoint a certain time. And as Ted was saying, that they're reducing the discounts by 0.05, 0.1. It's a small amount, and that it is very gradual. And we won't know, or the
They'd be
clients won't
targeted
know.
from the banks too.
Yeah,
They don't
correct.
want to be seen to be profiting during bad times.
Yeah,
and so they
that
do
too,
it a
yeah.
bit at a time and
Yeah.
gradually.
So it's not a one big event where everyone's talking about it. It's just over time that it happens, and you won't know until you actually call the banks and tell them, hey, what discount or what can I get a new discount? And virtually what it is it's the current clients who've already got the discount 3 months ago already have that larger discount. It's just the new clients that we're not getting as much.
Okay.
And they don't have that perception of what it was 3 or 4 months ago because they weren't in that conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas we're now, so it's harder to pick up.
That's why you need to listen to Lewis's State of Mind for all those inside tips.
That's right.
This podcast is brought to you by Holy Shirt Australia. Holy Shirt Australia are 100% online. They're Australia's largest no minimum custom print and embroidery company. All their services are completed in-house and they can deliver all orders promptly and professionally. They like to keep it simple and straightforward, so they offer cool stuff that can be custom printed or embroidered to your liking. They have an easy-to-use online designer to build your custom apparel from the comfort of your home or office. They offer pricing that reflects your individual order, and remember, they are no minimum on all their products. They deliver what the customer expects when they expect it. They've got over 1,500 products ready for you to custom print or embroider today, right now. So head to holyshirt.com.au for all your custom clothing requirements. All right, we've got to sum this all up. I think we've covered a lot today, which is great. I'm sure there is another podcast, so I hope you guys do come back. But top 5. Let's go through a top 5, right? Number 1, check in. We talked about checking in, yeah?
Yep. Well, brokers now doing 70% of loans in the country, so there's a reason why. They're looking after their customers.
And that's why you guys are always busy. Check in. It's just a phone call, isn't it?
Yep. Oh, we're doing a lot where we're not even changing banks and we're just dropping rates.
Yep.
I've done a lot of those lately.
Okay. Just with regards to rates and banks, did we say that picking up the phone and talking directly to your bank is a good thing to do?
It's better than doing nothing.
As opposed to coming and seeing you guys?
Or the difference with us would be that we'll know what what the market rate is and what they'll generally offer. Whereas if you don't know, you might accept a discount that's not as good as what you could get.
Yeah, because we said the sneaky bastards at the moment, aren't they, depending on who you deal with?
Yep. Well, one of the crazy things with the pricing tools of some of the banks is we plug it all in and the computer spits out an answer and you can accept it straight away. Yeah, it will take that discount. Or it says escalate, which means you ask for more.
Oh, right.
So, 100% we just press escalate and we get a little bit more. Whereas if you just accept that first offer, it's the computer spitting out, I guess they preset it to have a certain discount, but if you ask more, they'll probably give you more. So it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't cost anything. So, check in.
I think it's the same.
Like what Ted was saying, that we have, just because we can see all the other lenders, we can very much take it to the bank, the same bank, and say, look, another lender's offering this. Can we see if we match? Otherwise, they're going to leave. And that helps. And a lot of the time, that's that piece of after the automatic accepting it, we're going in there and just negotiating it for them as well.
Yeah.
And you don't have to leave.
Those lenders know what their competition's offering, don't they, on a daily basis?
They'll generally compete against similar banks. So if we put a smaller bank online lender has a really cheap rate up to Commonwealth Bank or NAB, they won't match it. But if NAB have a special, Commonwealth will match that special generally. They'll want to compete against similar type lenders.
Okay. Top tip number 2, savings plan, date night.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think it's good. What we went through in terms of the 4 scenarios was at the bottom line was always working out what you can actually save. And it's a good reflection to see, how long it actually takes to be able to get into a property. So even sitting down, working out a budget, like very simply what we did there, just a living expense, one figure, how much you can save on top of that as a bottom line, and then multiply that out by whatever you need. Most of the times we're having these chats every day with clients in terms of working that out. So exactly what we did as a scenario, we're going through this with every single person that we speak with. So they know exactly how much they need to save, how long it will take, et cetera, et cetera.
Sometimes it's amending their plans.
Yeah, the existing plans.
Well, it's making them realise exactly what's relevant and and
what's possible
and real and possible. But as we said previously, couples, whether you're married or whatever, you should have a regular check-in with each other about your financial situation, because it is a team effort. It's an ongoing thing that is not going to change. It's not going to go away. It's always going to be there. So get with your partner, go out, have a bottle of wine, have 2 if you can afford it, and you'll know at the end of the date night whether you could afford it. Yeah.
Well, often in a relationship, there's one person who's better at it. So sometimes having a third party like a broker and a meeting will help everyone reset their target and goals, and it becomes a little easier to focus.
Oh, are you suggesting that you should be invited to my date night? Is that what you're saying?
Not quite that.
Jeez.
After the date night, check in.
Yeah, check in.
I was going to say, that sounds cosy. You're paying too, by the way. All right, top tip number 3. Get a mortgage plan. We talked about date nights. If you're saving for a house, a unit, a home for your family, for you, see a mortgage broker, understand where you sit in the whole scenario, and then set a plan to achieve a goal. Now, that's no different for a mortgage or a business. It's about setting goals and being realistic about those goals and understanding what you need to do to achieve those goals.
Yeah,
we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Can you add to that?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that, as much as we know what is coming in as our income and we're always chasing for the high pay rise, it's also good to know what's going out. and goes back to the plan or the budgeting before. And then the other side of it is obviously when we're having chats to understand with that income, what can you actually borrow, what can you actually afford, as much as you can save a certain amount, what can you actually afford based on that property, and then based on that loan amount, what type of purchase price or what type of property is out there for you.
Well, it puts everything into perspective,
Correct.
doesn't it? So if you go, I've got this in my mind, I want a million, 1.1 value property, that's may not be the case. And
I often will have appointments where people thinking income, I need this income. Then they're going to say, hey, I also need this deposit. But then they say, well, what sort of property? So you'll have an appointment, do those numbers, and they say to the client, go away and see what your money can buy you, and then come back, and then we'll do the loan. Because, it's too many variables.
Yeah, that's right.
Number 4, how to increase your borrowing capacity. Now, the one major one that we talked about was the credit cards. For every $1,000 in credit or available credit you have, is $6,000 to $7,000 worth of finance off your borrowing capacity.
Yeah.
So we talked about reducing that with the amount of credit cards, also your HEX debt as well too.
Yeah, that's a new one over the last probably year that people can start to look at, especially with HEX rates actually being
quite high.
tied to inflation. So you're paying 6-7% on those HEX debts. So it's
Well, I think going forward, as some financial sensibility would be to pay down your debts before you get into more debt. Does that make sense? Does it not?
For a period of time, with HEX being in line with inflation at 1% and 2%, you've got a mortgage of 3-4%, but then your HEX debt is at 1-2%. So a lot of people, if they didn't need to, they would just keep that HEX. It's a lower.
It's still a debt, though, isn't it? Do you not agree with me, or is that just me being me?
But if it was at 1 or 2% and you had a home loan, you're paying 3-4%, you'd be better for paying the home first before the HEX. But now it's changing a bit.
Okay.
So now it's switching. So now your HEX debt is more expensive than your home debt. So it does make sense.
Not as bad as a credit card or getting closer to a car loan, that sort of level.
Okay, we got any other ways to reduce that? Increase your borrowing capacity?
You've got that, the main living expenses, which is always a big thing. I think the banks at the moment, they are looking at bank statements. So if you're doing a lot of gambling, I think we might have touched this in
No, we didn't. Did we?
So
if you're a gambler, they know better.
Yeah, so gambling, sports bet, if you do a lot of that.
Wow. Does Netflix still fall into that category?
There is a category now
for
subscriptions. So
fuck.
Yeah, but
they're drilling down.
Hey, talking about that, what's the weirdest subscription you've seen come up on a financial statement? Come on, there's got to be something dirty we can use for a short here. Come on.
I think.
No OnlyFans or anything? No?
I haven't seen an OnlyFans.
Would that actually come up in your statement? Or
Yeah,
I'm going to have to check my bank. No,
we've seen medical procedures before,
new boobs.
Yeah, and
actually, that's right.
And sometimes if it's not through people don't want to show that, so they just go with the doctor and they're higher than if they'd have just got a normal loan. Because they want it to keep it all private and
Oh, really?
Yeah, like an all-in-one place that does it. We'll do the job and we'll do the loan for you too, and it's probably more than the standard.
Yeah. But if you got a new set of boobs, you want everybody to know about it, don't you?
Maybe not the banks. I don't know.
I can just imagine the feedback I'm going to get from the female listeners of this one. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
All right, number 5. Take advantage of the government schemes. That's what we've got. That's what we talked about in a few of those scenarios today. If they're there and you can take advantage of them, why would you not?
Yeah, I think
I mean, compared to what the schemes were, 5-10 years ago, the current ones are actually pretty good for those first home buyers that don't have the deposit.
Yeah.
Not that you should take it again into debt, but if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well take advantage of those government schemes because they are pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
In the last example with the first home buyer family, they were able to use 3 lots of different schemes that we touched base before.
That's right.
And it actually helped them, save so much time in terms of getting themselves into a property. Albeit the loan is high because you're getting a 95% loan, but at least you've got yourself in a property and your focus is now working at your budget and trying to pay that loan down.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Once again, a lot of great information, top tips. I think our viewers and listeners are going to get a lot out of today. I really appreciate you guys coming back. So Let's Make Finance Fun Vol. 2 is now in the can.
Yeah.
So once again,
thanks for having us again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's a wrap, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in and for your time. You know the vibe, I'm steady living until I die. It's a lewd state of mind and we showed you that. Keep it authentic and real, I hope you coming back. Hey, make sure that you subscribe, cause we got it popping all the time and it's going down. If you wanna elevate, wanna live a better life, keep it locked here. You know it's a lewd state of mind, let's go.